There's no place like the Qube. Family, it's your favorite queer radio personality, Anna DeShawn, with our queer news for today. Now, I want to make you a promise. We will continue to bring you the latest in queer news, culture, and politics every Monday by 7 a.m. Chicago time. So, if you are digging our intersectional take on the weekly, consider joining the QCrew. The QCrew is our monthly membership program we started to help grow the podcast. You get weekly emails from me, exclusive interviews with LGBTQ influencers from across the country, and beginning this year, special behind-the-scenes footage too. With your support, we can bring you more stories celebrating our lesbian, gay, bisexual, transgender, queer, and comrade communities. Click the link in the show notes to join the QCrew today. Don't have $5 to join the QCrew? It's okay. There's things you can do for free. You can rate and review us inside your favorite podcasting app and tell a friend. Or two. Family. Black people in the South make up 38% of the population, but 52% of all new HIV infections. So why aren't we talking about it? I'm Anna DeShawn, your favorite queer radio personality. My co-host Dwayne Kramer and I will explore the shame, the stigma, and the solutions. This is Black HIV in the South. How did we get here? Tune in on the Qube or wherever you get your podcasts.
Are you lost in your podcast journey? If so, you found the right podcast. My name is DJ Tracy Treese, and I'm a podcast producer. In partnership with the Qube, I'm bringing you the Lost and Found for podcasters. I've worked behind the scenes on some of your favorite podcasts, and I'll be bringing you some great conversations with podcast industry experts to help you find your way through your podcast journey. There's so much information out there, and the industry is rapidly changing. No need to feel lost. You found the right podcast. Subscribe to the Lost and Found for podcasters now. Everywhere that you listen to podcasts, if you prefer your podcast in video, click the link in the description to subscribe to this podcast on YouTube.
You are now tuned in to higher frequencies. We do this frequently. Turn your radio station to E3 for that decency. Listen to great music and the latest movement. Safe listening for anyone that's tuned in. Who you waking up to? Anna DeShawn, QCrew and friends. It's that real talk. Online radio with the spins. You caught up in traffic, frustrated. Just check in with E3 to shift your vibrations and get elevated. That's queer radio done right. Choose to be yourself. That's the only way to live life, and that's how it's done here. Just know y'all tuned in to the greatest. Ain't no competition. We ain't worried about the other stations. Check.
Now for the news. Tennessee did it. They did. They banned drag shows and so much more. Mayor Lori Lightfoot loses her bid to be reelected as mayor of Chicago. A Kentucky mom is banned from refereeing because she's a lesbian. And Chicago legend Don Bell gets nominated for a GLAAD Media Award. Let's go. Family. Now for an update on Tennessee. You know, last week we discussed the bill that was headed to the governor's desk that would essentially ban drag shows. Well, he signed it. Governor Bill Lee signed the bill which limits what they are calling in the bill, quote, adult cabaret performances, end quote, specifically on public property. Now, if found guilty, the performer could face a misdemeanor. If they are found guilty multiple times, they could face a felony. You may be wondering, how do they define adult cabaret? Don't worry, they got that covered, okay? The bill basically says anything that features topless dancers, go-go dancers, exotic dancers, strippers, male or female impersonators who provide entertainment that appeals to a prurient interest or similar entertainers. Family, I had to look up what in the world prurient meant. I mean, what? It means having or encouraging an excessive interest in sexual matters. Chile, they are exhausting, okay? They framed this whole bill as an act to protect children. But isn't that the parents' responsibility? They have framed this entire anti-LGBTQ, anti-trans legislative attack as an effort to protect family values and children. It's such BS. Republicans stay in other people's business until it's theirs. And then, y'all, it's all about First Amendments, okay? And whatever other BS they can come up with. The facts are, the more visible LGBTQ folks become, the more visible drag entertainers become, the more anti-LGBTQ and anti-trans rhetoric and legislation we should expect. It's just the sad reality of what progress looks like. Please know, and I am completely aware that this is only the beginning for 2023. I'm sure many other Republican states are eyeing Tennessee as a blueprint for how they can pass very similar legislation. As I've read, there are already a dozen floating around legislatures across this country. Just so you know, this law for Tennessee goes into effect on July 1st. In more political news, here in Chicago, Mayor Lori Lightfoot did not obtain enough votes to enter the runoff election to be the next mayor of Chicago. Mayor Lightfoot was the first Black lesbian mayor, and honestly, the first lesbian mayor of Chicago. And anywhere I traveled, folks would ask me about Mayor Lightfoot. I could be in the back of an Uber, I could be eating at a restaurant, I could be checking into a hotel. Anytime I told somebody I was from Chicago, they would ask me about Mayor Lightfoot. It was always a conflicting response. I have appreciated what she's done to invest in the South and West Side communities, especially small businesses. I appreciated her and her team's efforts around COVID, right? And how they communicated that out to the masses here in Chicago. I thought that was all really well done. But we also can't dismiss the fact that she had no support from the Chicago Teachers Union and also where our Chicago public schools are today. We also cannot forget about the protests after George Floyd and her raising the bridges on the protesters and essentially blocking them in downtown, right? Like, these are things we can't forget. And she had lost so much support here in Chicago. But I do want to say this. This is the first time in 40 years the incumbent did not make it to the runoff. This hasn't happened since the first woman was Mayor Jane Byrne. Now, there needs to be some dialogue and some exploration around that part, okay? But that's not what this story is about. She was running against 8 other candidates for the position. And Paul Vallis, a former CEO of Chicago Schools, will face off against Brandon Johnson, a Cook County commissioner endorsed by the Chicago Teachers Union. They will face off in a runoff election April 4th. Now, Vallis is endorsed by the racist Fraternal Order of Police. I promise y'all, they must be one of the top 3 most racist Fraternal Order of Police, okay, in the country. Johnson is endorsed by the Chicago Teachers Union. Chicago politics never disappoints. Never. So, we will see how this all shakes down. Now let's move on to Kentucky, where a mom of 6 was asked to stop refereeing her kids' basketball games because she's a lesbian. Yep, this happened. Church officials rang Aina McKinney's doorbell and told her she was banned. Now, she claims the church officials knew she was a lesbian in a relationship with children. But we all know how this goes. It takes one homophobe in a room to speak up. The church has no backbone. Then discrimination like this takes place. Aina's wife, Jessica, told WCPO, quote, "We obviously see judgment or discrimination often within our world, but it's an unimaginable experience when you are facing it personally." Aina and Jessica are now making it their mission to make sure that flyers promoting this league are no longer promoted by the school system they live in. A district spokesperson told WCPO, quote, "Based on what has happened to this family in the future, we will ensure all flyers will be vetted through the lens of inclusion before approving them to be distributed in our schools," end quote. That was refreshing to hear, but you just never know how that all will shake down. I think as someone who hopes to be a parent one day, These are things we have to look at, right? We always have to research and read the fine print on the organization that's running something, doing something, because we just don't know how they stand or feel about who we are. I can compare it to travel, for example. I don't travel anywhere that has committed crimes or hate against LGBTQ folks because I'm not stealth. You can look at me and maybe assume I'm queer. And in some places, that's dangerous. And the same goes for moments like this. These organizations, they market themselves as pro-family, but really, y'all, they're anti-us, you know? Now, I must end this queer news with some good news, okay? Goodness. One of our Chicago heroes and legend, Mr. Donald M. Bell, has been nominated for a GLAAD Media Award. He's been nominated for Outstanding Online Journalism Video or Multimedia for his part in the video titled The Stonewall Generation Has Found Their Voice with Leslie Jordan and Donald M. Bell. Yeah, y'all, the Leslie Jordan. Yeah, he was in the video with the Leslie Jordan. Now, let Don tell it. This nomination is coming because of Leslie Jordan, but let me tell you, Don is just that special to us here in Chicago. The GLAAD Media Awards are set to take place on March 30th in Los Angeles. Don told me he's not traveling to LA. So we're going to cheer with Don from Chicago in hopes that he brings home a GLAAD Media Award. Y'all, friends, family, one day, very soon, we're going to go to these awards with a nomination too. That's going to happen. Y'all know we always close out every podcast with a word. Anna's got a word. Today, let's close the podcast with some words from Marlon Riggs. He said, "I was born gay, just as I was born black. It is necessary to constantly remind ourselves that we are not an abomination." After all the news I shared today, I don't know who needs this word today, but you listening. I'm talking to you. You are perfectly and wonderfully made. Don't you ever forget that. You are enough, and your angels and your ancestors have your back. Till next week, family. Peace. If you enjoyed what you hear, rate and review us inside your favorite podcasting app. This podcast is a production of E3 Radio, your #1 queer radio station playing queer music and reporting on queer news in high rotation.